Former minister and founder of Something or Other Publishing, Wade Franson is the host of Created in the Image of God, a series that examines the role of religion in society, from messianic returns to the emotive responses transmitted through our culture. Wade fearlessly addresses reality claims from all directions, objectively exploring their compatibility with Holy Scripture. Tonight's episode, Regenerative Farming, with Mollie Engelhart.
Hello, everyone. It's Wade Franson. It is Tuesday night, time for Created in the Image of God. I am extremely excited about tonight's guest. This show tonight signifies a shift in this show here on episode, whatever it is that we're on right now, episode 125. As we move into the end of the year, the holiday season, we will be rebranding the show and moving towards more direct engagement with you, the audience, wherever you are on this planet, connecting you with people who want to work with you to transform the world and that you will want to work with. One such person is Mollie Engelhart. Let's welcome her into the studio. Hi there, Mollie.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we are so excited. My wife, whom everyone here watching the show will get to meet in a little while, who's never actually been on the show before, is the one who found you, because we've been involved in something called the Royal Falcon Foundation now, summer camp programs, working with kids on programs called experiential learning, where we've had spring, summer, and fall camps teaching kids the art of, initially it was simply companion planting, species that do well together, that don't do well together. And then we moved into soil science, regenerative farming, doing work down at the Baha'i Institute, in the Desert Rose Baha'i Institute in Arizona, where they just have dead dust. They don't have soil. And we went there to help them get a food to table little garden going. But you are an inspiration in terms of what you've done, and I can't wait to help the audience get to know you a little bit. So, as we always do on this show, we like to know your creation story. So start with your earliest memories about your family, how you grew up, your parents, the environment in which you grew before you were taking conscious thought about what you wanted to be when you grew up.
My parents had me very young, and they were 19 and 20 when they had me. And my earliest memories are right after my brother was born, who were 2 years apart, in Connecticut, living at my grandmother's house, and my father working with my uncle. And just really, my mom was a stay-at-home mom and really into food, everything, Vitamixing, everything. She was a vegan and a vegetarian, but she was very into food, inventing things, and I have a lot of memories around food. And when we left my grandmother's house, my parents got enough money that we could have our own place. They bought a farm in upstate New York, and I want to say they bought it for $12,000. So I was 5, and I'm 46 right now. So this is 41 years ago. In Danby, which is just outside of Ithaca, New York. We bought 27 acres outside of Ithaca, New York, and my father planted an apple orchard, and we had a pond and a barn, and my uncle Scott raised dairy cows until they could get, sent to wherever till they get as feeders on male dairy cows. And so he would just raise them, and then we lived on a farm, in a very simple farm life. And then my mother started making dresses at the farmer's market and selling them alongside of other things in order to make ends meet. And my father was doing construction, and my mom and her twin sister were doing these dresses and selling other stuff at the farmer's market. And my uncle was doing the cow thing. And eventually my mother became very popular fashion designer, and we shifted away from agriculture in that way. And we were doing fashion shows at the Jacob Javits Center in New York. And it was a very big shift from being, 4 adults, 2 children, 1 wallet, making less than, I don't know, very little money. And to my mom started to create some success. But even when we were really poor, my mother's twin worked at the co-op in town. And so we always had grain that had gone bad or whatever, and we would sift the bugs out of it, or we always organic and like very clean food was always important. So even when we didn't have the money, there was like a way for us to have it, whether it was us growing it or my auntie working at the natural food co-op. And then, life shifted. My aunt moved to Hawaii. My mom became this fashion designer, and I was in went through high school, and we kind of went away from the farming thing. And what's interesting is we've all actually come back to the farming thing. My father's a dairy farmer in Idaho. My mother's a farmer in Maui, and I'm a farmer in Texas, was a farmer in California. My father was a farmer in California. And so there was this time where my parents were doing the clothing company, and then all of us went to the restaurant industry, my father with Cafe Gratitude and Gracias Madre, and me with Sage, and now the restaurant here in Texas. But we all found our way back to farming individually, not as a family all together, but we all found our way back to it. So that's interesting.
That's wonderful. In keeping with the farming analogy, you all went back to your roots, right? See what I did there?
Yes.
So I want to ask a follow-on question then about growing up and perhaps why perhaps several of the family members left for a while. My father grew up on a farm in Sweden. My grandfather started working when he was 12, and he established a farm, dairy farm, chickens, grain in Sweden. And my dad, the reason I'm in America is my dad couldn't wait to get away from that farm. He always resented that they were like weeding when the city kids were down by the pool, by the lake, right, having fun in the summer. And when he emigrated then to Canada, the first thing he did was find work on a farm because he didn't speak English, right? But my point being, did you have any like sense of, yeah, this isn't cool when you were a kid on a farm and what you were doing, or your family was really supportive and you embraced it always?
I didn't have any sense that it wasn't cool. I mean, I literally had the best life ever. And my brother lives here on the farm in Texas with me. And last couple nights ago, he went adventuring with the kids in the woods, and he's like running through the woods with a stick. And he was like, I'm having more fun than they are. And I said, why do you think that is? He's like, it's because it's like when we were a kid and we were just like running through the woods. And so I always thought it was amazing. The apple orchard, the pond, the horses, all of it was really amazing. And I didn't feel that resentment. I see that resentment in my children a little bit, in full honesty. The other night, Sunday night, the restaurant here on the ranch closed, and rain was coming in the middle of the night, and there was some small sections of popcorn between the rows in the orchard, 6 or 7 sections that needed to be hand harvested because of how they were configured. And I said, hey guys, it's going to rain tonight and it's getting dark in an hour and a half, and we're going to do this. And I could see my kids' disappointment in that. What they wanted to do was go eat something fun or watch TV or play a game. And this is what we were doing. And I could see, they're slow, doing it more slowly on a purposefully, slowly. And so I see that, and I try to not cultivate that in my kids, but I do see that.
Yeah. Well, the reason I bring that up is that people don't know what they're missing, right? When you talk about the joys of growing up on the farm and what you learned and what the experience of, being with the kids out in the woods with a stick, you can't replicate that, with these devices that, have everybody so captivated and captured and addicted.
You cannot. We had a event here. It was like 500 people, and this guy, my son has a little Jeep, not like he's 10. It's a gas powered stick shift, but it's little. It's little. And so this guy said to my son something about one of the tractors, and he was like, when you get big, you'll be able to drive a tractor or a car. And my son looked at him and he goes, oh, I can drive a Jeep and I can drive a skid steer and I can drive a golf cart. And the only reason I can't drive that tractor is because it's not hand control, it's foot control, and I'm not tall enough yet. And the person was like, oh my goodness. So there's also, something so beautiful in what they're getting. Sure, they get frustrated or whatever, and our ranch is 200 and something acres, and there's the restaurant and the house. And sometimes I'll say, hey, can you go down to the restaurant and get me a loaf of bread and a thing of butter and tortillas? And he'll come back up. He'll drive, like he basically has to drive to the store and get the stuff and drive back at 9 years old.
Cool. Well, let's spend a minute talking about your transition then into the restaurant business and what you did in California. Tell us a little bit about how that got started.
Yeah, so I moved to California to be in the film industry and make movies like so many people. And I did many things. I was in the entertainment industry. I was in music. I did professional stand-up poetry, not stand-up poetry. Yeah. Spoken word poetry. I was on HBO Deaf Poetry Jam. I toured around the country. And then I was growing marijuana and then I couldn't grow marijuana anymore. And for various reasons, but mainly because my brother-in-law did some things that were not smart and ended up in jail in Wisconsin for marijuana. So I wasn't good. So I decided to open a raw ice cream shop in circa 2009. And I opened it with my best friend, and we quickly realized that raw ice cream was very narrow. You're not going to be able to get a large swath of the public with raw vegan ice cream made out of cashews. And so then we also opened a restaurant, and actually these two gentlemen just walked into our restaurant. And my life has been a series of following, like being called or following or taking the opportunities that God has laid out. And so these two men came into the restaurant. They were Palestinian, Orthodox Christian or Orthodox Catholic Palestinian men who had a restaurant that was vegan, and they wanted me to put my ice cream shop in the front of it and like sublease a part of it. And so I did. And that eventually I owned that restaurant. And first I was their partners. That did not work out very well. And I ended up having that restaurant. And that was my first restaurant. And that was not the trajectory I was going to go, but God put that right in my path. And I just followed. And so that led to, 13 years of wildly successful businesses, one after another, opening them, and 350 employees, and, selling millions of dollars of food and really creating community. And so many families came out of that restaurant, so many first dates that turned to families, so many employees got married and had children, like so much. But at the beginning of the pandemic, I had already shifted my mindset more about regenerative agriculture. And so I was thinking we were going to sell, but that did not end up happening. And because of the pandemic and everything closing for 2.5 years. And so my restaurant foray in California was very successful for all those years. But somewhere around 2013, I heard about regenerative agriculture and started having a farm in tandem with the restaurants and growing the food for the restaurants.
I think that's a great segue to the video. We have a video here about you showing how to compost food scraps to save the environment. And I know there was a little bit of a snafu with the video selection. So we're going to probably cut this video off abruptly and then switch to the next segment with my beautiful wife, the better half of my life, who's going to make a debut here on the show to talk to you about specifically regenerative farming. So
Excellent.
Don't go anywhere in the audience. This is going to give you a quick insight into what Mollie's talking about and her experience out in California. And then we'll transition to what she's doing now when Angela comes on to host the show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of Mollie Engelhart.
Plant-based chef and regenerative farmer, and I want to show you guys a little bit what we're doing to divert plant material from my restaurants and bringing it back to the farm, creating soil and closing that loop. we always talk about the problems with the environment, and we talk about gas, and we talk about coal, we talk about fracking, but actually the number 3 environmental problem is methane coming out of the landfills. And what is creating that methane is food waste, food scraps, yard scraps, biomass going into the landfill. And so each and every day in our restaurants, we collect 100% of that biomass and we bring it back to the farm. If you imagine buffalo cauliflower at Sage, it's delicious. People order it all the time. But think about that big chunk that you cut off the bottom of every single cauliflower. We fill a 55-gallon drum of those every single day. And so that, along with kale stems and citrus and avocado peels and avocado pit, gets loaded by liftgate onto a box truck. That box truck goes around to all of our restaurants. And we come back to the farm. So every day the compost from the restaurant gets dumped, and then we cover it with manure from animals.
So excited to be here on the debuting on Wade's show. Excited to be here to learn about regenerative farming, agriculture from you and all that you're learning. My first question is just knowing and learning about regenerative farming and explaining to us about what that is. We hear a lot about regeneration and regenerative farming, and can you explain what that is compared to, I guess, what we see locally? I see a lot of corn and soybean, and what does that mean, regenerative farming?
So regenerative agriculture or regenerative farming, I like to say it is putting money into the bank account instead of taking money out of the bank account of the soil. And if we think about soil as the foundation of all of life on the planet, it has all this microbiology in it. But if we treat it like just dirt and we're not caring for it, then it gets degraded and it becomes dirt versus soil. And so regenerative agriculture has 5 main principles, and those main principles are no-till or low-till. And people say, no-till, everybody's tilling all around me. What do you mean? But if there's this food web of all that microbiology in the ground and it gets all connected and it's growing food and it's feeding the roots and it does that, and you cut all that up, it does damage. It does huge amounts of damage. And yes, they measure that damage in carbon that goes up in the atmosphere, but I'm not so worried about the carbon going up in the atmosphere. I'm more talking about that life that we have in the planet. 25 to 50% of life on the planet is in that top 8 inches of topsoil. And if we keep doing that, we're doing irreparable damage. So no-till. And then the next principle of regenerative agriculture is biodiversity. And so you need to have different kinds of things growing. You can't just grow corn or just grow soy. And then you also want to have plants that are perennials and annuals together. And you want to have plants that can help balance nitrogen and plants that have mycorrhizal relationships with the soil growing together. So that is the other. And then the third one is cover crops. Cover when you're done planting your corn. If you want to do corn and just do a monocrop of corn, but when you're done planting your corn, not just leaving that field fallow through the winter time, but maybe planting a winter rye or a 16 species forage or soil builder cover crop that keeps the soil covered. I like to say the mother is modest. Mother Earth is modest. She does not want all her skin to be exposed. So let's cover her with cover crops. And then the fourth, and what I would say is one of the most important and what was life-changing for me and had me switch away from veganism and all of that, is the animal integration, that you need to have animal impact on the soil. You need to have herd impact on the soil. And so if you're growing corn, like you're talking about, or soy, and then you combine that, okay, well then let's no-till seed drill some rye on there. And then in the springtime, let's have a herd of cows move across that field and eat that rye. And then let's plant the corn again. But at least you got some other stuff done. And then the last thing is no chemicals or less chemicals. Using less chemicals so those are the 5 main tenets of regenerative agriculture. And I know there are some others that are about nothing to do with soil. I'm the kind of regenerative agriculture person who thinks that I'm just going to focus on the soil and not try to like force people to have other beliefs mixed in, like those, that should be a different, that's a different conversation. So.
Mhm. Yeah, I've talked to some local farmers about this, about regenerative farming, and they talked about how challenging it is. And I noticed when watching your video that you don't have a lot of the equipment because the local farmers, I know a lot of the equipment is so expensive, and then to make money as a farmer is really challenging. So can you comment on that?
Yes, I have equipment. I have I mean, I don't have the equipment they have, but I have like $100,000 worth of tractors, which is whatever, thousands of dollars a month in payments. And then we have the no-till seed drill, which is a specific equipment for planting without damaging the soil. And then, we have other equipment, but it's not as expensive. We use electric fencing where we move the cattle every single day. So that animal integration, we're never letting the animals stay on any one part of the soil for more than much time. So we just will put the cows in, depending on how many, but you do the math on thousands of pounds per an acre, and then you move them. So we move the cows every single day. We move the goats every single day. So we use electric fencing for that. But yes, here's the thing. The farming system in America is a money slave system, just like many things. My life is a money slave system. Like I have a car and it has payments, and I have this, and I have a mortgage, and I have a house, and I'm required to go try to run around and find money so I can pay my mortgage so I don't lose my house. Like we're all in that. But the farming system is crazy. And if you're not a farmer, you can't even imagine, like, imagine that your job that you had to go do every day, 365 days a year, on weekends, on your birthday, on holidays or whatever, you had to borrow money every year to do it. And you had to put up your house and your ancestral family land in order to do that job. And then you had to work that hard 365 days a year and hope that at the end you are not going to lose the family farm. You're not the generation where your family farm got lost with you. So yes, it is super challenging. And regenerative agriculture there is ways that people are doing it and making money, but it is hard to make money. And I'm on calls all the time where people are saying, like, how can we get the public to care more about this? I've got these oranges that have 39 times the whatever nutrients and then the conventional ones. And I've got this wheat that has all these phytonutrients and these beef with phytonutrients that's not found anywhere else. How do we get the consumers to care? Because it does feel a little lonely out here. Sometimes, like, we're doing this super hard work because we've been called to, because we think it's healthier for all of us. And then sometimes it doesn't feel like the customers are interested. So it is a really challenge financially. And I do think that people are shifting their mindset. I think people are waking up about it. And I know that those farmers are doing the best they can. And nobody wants to spray harmful chemicals on their ground. Like, nobody wants to do it. And so everybody is just either in an old mindset, they've convinced themselves it's okay, or they're just trying to survive. And those of us who are trying to do something different, where we're mostly doing direct to consumer. And even people who thought they weren't going to do direct to consumer. I have a friend who's doing wheat, like oats and wheat and stuff. And he thought he would sell not direct to consumer. And now he's putting in a mill at the farm because the only way for him to make it work is direct to consumer. So it is hard. And if you just want to grow something and sell it to a packing house, or grow something and sell it to a meat packer, or grow something and send it to a mill, or send it to the commodity market, then regenerative agriculture is likely not for you, because we're not there on the consumer end yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there is people shifting their mindset. There are some in our area as far as that. I also noticed that it really created community a lot of people are working with you at your farm, and it creates community, the regenerative, because a lot of people are helping you and that rather than having all the machines.
Yes, I talk about this all the time. One man on hundreds of acres with a tractor does not support the feed store, does not support the local restaurant, does not support all of the businesses in town. If you have, doesn't support the veterinarian, if it doesn't support all these things, but it doesn't support the local doctor. It's just one person. But my farm right now, we have 22 people here. So, and we have hundreds of animals, and so we're supporting the local barber. Everybody goes and gets their haircut. One, not me, but like the boys go get their haircut. We go to the local feed store to get stuff for the animals. We support the local hardware store because we're working on projects, and people come out to the restaurant and then they're supporting us, and it's like circular like that. And so, and people say, oh, now today I went to the grocery store and someone pointed and they said, that's that Sovereignty Ranch lady. And my kid said, how did they know you, Mom? And I was like, I don't know, the internet, or they came to the farm. But it does create this circular relationship. And I'll tell you just one silly thing about this, but on Halloween, we had this costume contest on the ranch, and it was $1,000 prize. And we had the first couple that's really like supported our restaurant here in Texas that wanted to support us. They had their kid's birthday party the night before Halloween. And they were like, can you just open the restaurant on a day you're not normally open, but we'll invite 100 people and everybody's going to eat food. And it's going to be this many kids and this many adults. And we're going to encourage everybody to drink and eat food and everything. And so it was exactly $1,011 for their birthday party at the end of the night. All the checks closed out. And then the next night, her husband won the costume contest, which was $1,000 prize. And I handed it back to him. And he said, I feel so bad. Like, I just brought everybody here and we only made you $1,000 last night. And then you gave it back. And I said, well, no, but really that's like the circular, like your family and friends came to the birthday party. They supported me. They all found out about me. They'll come back. And then you put all this effort into this. His costume was epic. And, he was a cedar tree and he was 10 feet tall. It was the craziest thing you could imagine. But anyways, and you put all this effort into your costume, and we wanted to support someone's costume contest that had, the best costume, and it was yours. And so it totally went in a circle. But that's like a little tiny microcosm of what is happening in the whole community. And yes, it's happening everywhere. The lady that cleans the rental homes here, she's always posting on Facebook, and people are always telling me like, oh, Heather, told me, I saw it on Heather's Facebook. Oh, she posted the burrito she was eating or whatever. Or she posted, you had pumpkins. We want to buy some pumpkins. And she's happy to do it because she's cleaning the houses and making money. And they're happy because they've known her she's lived here longer. She has more goodwill in the community. So all of these things are happening together when it's all together. But when we're all just an island without helping each other, then when something happens, nobody even knows who anybody is or how to help. And to me, it's bigger than just agriculture, and it's bigger than just community. It's a national security issue for us to know how to grow food and to know how to navigate growing food without all the equipment, because we may not always have access to all the equipment. There could be a solar flare, there could be an EMP, there could be a lot of different things. Do I use equipment? Every day. But do I know how to do things without it? For sure.
Beautiful. Well, we're now going to go to a commercial break. And when we come back, we'll be talking about the impact your work is having and the ability it has to transform society.
Excellent.
Our water, our food, and our flowers. With the global push towards highly processed, corporatized foods and the demonization of local farms, grass-fed beef, and localized systems, we desperately need to uplift our health and our happiness from the grassroots. A Japanese saying states, "It is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war." Embodying the warrior spirit and the innocence of a child, every individual can walk in the garden with purpose, seeking workable ways to co-create a more beautiful world. Planting victory gardens in the midst of a war on agriculture and on culture itself, we can rise like wildflowers. We are free to grow outside. Our health is in our hands. Food freedom and seed sovereignty offer answers to seemingly unsolvable problems. During this series, we will explore food as medicine and natural remedies free from big pharma. We will reveal advice for novice growers from green-thumbed gardeners, permaculture practices that nourish natural beauty, plus playful experiential learning activities and ways to accomplish the divine art of homesteading. Addressing the threats to liberty in related fields, gardeners, farmers, nutritionists, homeopaths, artists, educators, writers, homeschooling parents, and other food and flower enthusiasts will provide exciting solutions. Prose and poetry will illustrate the style of establishing food and flower companions and resisting the urge to pair antagonistic plants and people, requiring proper space to grow. Families of people and plants possess a pure power. The universal language of artful agriculture can create a much-needed momentous unity if growers of all kinds lead by inspiration, not force. Let us unfold interconnected communities from the grassroots, musing on how agriculture can serve as the fertile soil for an organically forming society. I'm Sienna Mayheath, and this is Food is Freedom.
Welcome back, everyone. You're watching Created in the Image of God, the role of religion in society. And we might say tonight, the role of regenerative farming in society. We're here with Mollie Engelhart, who founded Sovereignty Ranch in Texas after being out in California and establishing very successful restaurants. So we learned so much from the interview with Angela around the mechanics and the outcome of community, right? As you were talking in that last segment about the circle of relationships, I was thinking it's like the soil, it's like the topsoil, right? It's like the interconnectedness of those organisms and those roots and how it all works so beautifully and perfectly together. And you're reestablishing the natural intended order of things. And it's just so inspiring and so heartwarming. So in this segment, we want to talk a little bit about the impact that you're having. So Mollie, share just the briefest, about the transition. You mentioned you were in California during COVID. Things began to change there, and you decided to make another move out to Texas. Tell us a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, I realized, we were thinking we were selling the restaurant in 2019, going into 2020. We had a big deal for $25 million. And then we're going through all the process, and then the government shut down my restaurants. And so I felt robbed. I had put in thousands of hours, thousands of years and years of 365 days, 363 days a year. Maybe I took off Christmas and Thanksgiving, but just working every day. And I felt like I'd been robbed, and that the government was somehow able to just come in while I was in the due diligence process of this closing out this time in my life, came in and just shut us down. And so, of course, the venture capital money went away, everything went away. There was no deal. And I just was left pivoting and trying to navigate crazy rules, 6 feet apart, 8 feet apart. If there's booths, they don't need to be 6 feet apart. Oh no, you redo all the restaurant seating to be booths, and you spend all that money. Oh, the booth rule is out. Friday at midnight, the booth rule is out. And then you're doing all this, and then no indoor dining, but you can have outdoor dining, and you spend all this money. You get lamps and heaters and this, and make outdoor things, and get a permit for this, and build a structure and enclose partially so the wind. And then they say no outdoor dining. Outdoor dining is too dangerous. And
let me just interject a thought here. And I kind of hate to do this, but I feel it's necessary for all those watching who think that the solution is government regulation, right?
It's not. It's never going to be. There's nothing. Government pulls levers, and they never have to be responsible for the outcome of the lever they pull. And so when they were doing that, I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off with a 3-month-old baby strapped to my chest. Just, okay, well, now we're doing this. Okay, there's no fresh produce in the stores because there's no supply chain or whatever. So I'm going to bring produce from the ranch, and we're going to create like a little grocery store in the restaurant. And okay, we're putting oranges on Uber Eats. Does anybody want oranges? We have lemons. We have avocados. We're adding it. We have toilet paper. People need toilet paper. We're just like pivoting and pivoting and pivoting. But after all that work, after all that, at the end, I just had to close restaurants because I can't make payroll, because I can't pay payroll taxes, because I can't. And the government continues to raise minimum wage. They just raised and I believe everybody that works for me should get paid more than I can pay them. To be clear, that's not what I'm saying. But if you just move the lever of minimum wage, say everybody that works in fast food has to get $20 an hour. Well, that means that everybody that's in fine dining, cooking, anybody that's cooking real food in a restaurant needs to get paid more than $20 an hour, because significantly more, because they're cooking everything from scratch and these guys are pressing a button, right? So now you've got servers getting $18 an hour plus tips. And then you get workers' comp they change all the laws with workers' comp and make it more in the favor of the employee. So all the insurance companies pull out. So the free business, the free will, the actual capitalism, which was what people think is the problem, will remove themselves from these bad situations like California. So then the other businesses that now are required to have workers' comp are paying $500,000 a year for half of the employees with no major accidents, because all the companies have pulled out of the area. So all these things just stacked and stacked and stacked. And I literally felt attacked by my own government. And I am an organic chef, organic farmer, vegan, married to someone who was undocumented when we got married. I grew up in Ithaca, New York. I mean, literally, you should look me up, and I should be like California's poster child for like that. You would, if I want to leave, something is broken. And I just didn't want to be there anymore. I felt literally attacked. I felt like I had played by all the rules. I had worked really hard. I had navigated the hardest state in the country and had 10 years of year-over-year growth and profitability for my investors and all of that. And when it came time for me to say, okay, I'm going to be a mom now and I'm going to step away, they took that away, and they did it on purpose with no evidence, with no science, with nothing. And so that's why I moved to Texas. That was a long answer, but basically government overreach is why I moved to Texas. And I could tell you a whole bunch of things with the farm that would be the same, how tall your compost pile can be, how many different permits you need. You need your egg permit and your citrus permit and your citrus growing permit and your citrus moving permit and on and on and on. And I just want to grow food for my family and my community. I want to live in community. Also, California has very strict rules about living in RVs and tiny houses and permitting and all that.
Right. So to transition back to the soil, real quick plug, we've had economist Bruce Kerber on talking about the divine economy theory, getting into some of these same issues, and we've had some really interesting discussions over the last several months. So that's a whole nother Oprah, and I'm really glad that you highlighted that from deep personal experience. It's awesome and important for people to understand these things. It's complex, but you make it simple through the videos that you've created. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and a video is worth 1,000 pictures, right? It lives, it breathes. When we watch your videos, we see it manifested in action. So what kind of impact are you actually having as people see what you're doing? And you mentioned the community. What has really been accomplished in the last X number of years since you started Sovereignty Farm or Sovereignty Ranch, and where do you see it going in the next few years?
So we're really in the infancy here. You know, I had a farm in California and we were serving so many people, and all that was sad to have to leave. But We had a CSA program, and we had the milk herd share, and all of these things that we were doing. And now we're doing that again here, but it's really like a food desert here. So, in California, when people said, they came and they were like, oh, well, I had your CSA, but I had this other free, and then Flamingo Estates, and they had all these options. I'm creating food in the middle of nowhere in the hill country. When people come to my ranch and they're like, I can't believe there's a restaurant. How many people told me, like, I got in a fight with my wife on the way there because no way there was a restaurant there. And they get there and they just can't believe that they're eating this high quality food, no seed oils, no chemicals. They can see the cows grazing in the field while they're eating their burger and tallow fries. And then they can go on a farm tour with me and learn about this regenerative agriculture. And so I was led here 100%. Many circumstances had me this would not be the best location as far as like economics and the business plan and whatever, but I was led here, and I'm clear this is the community that I'm meant to serve. And so here I am serving. And right now the restaurant's only open a couple of days a week. And then we're doing the CSA program and the herd share with the raw dairy. But people are just besides themselves happy because there's nothing like this. It's not like I'm one of 10 farms doing this like I was in California. People cannot believe. They're just like, thank you so much. I can't believe this. I prayed to God for somebody like this, for some kind of organic food here. So I'm making an impact in that way. And then we're making an impact on the soil already. Areas of the farm where nothing would grow, where we couldn't grow anything, has deep and black, rich soil already. And this farm had a lot of soil. It was just not cared for. And we're bringing the life back to the soil. And you walk through the fields on my farm and you see the life coming out of the fields where, the foxes and the birds and the dragonflies that wasn't there before. So on the macro and micro and the macro life and the fauna and all of that. But then in the bigger community, of course, we're employing people and we're providing healthy food and no seed oils and no chemicals and no pesticides. And that is a blessing anywhere. But here it's really a blessing because there's nothing like it. It's not one of 3, one of 5. There's nothing else like it.
That's just amazing. And Angela, I don't want to dominate here. If you had a question or an angle that you wanted to jump in on, feel free.
One question I had was about your website, that you have some education for people. It's called Kiss the Ground, right?
Kiss the Ground is that's a foundation my brother started, but yes, it's a nonprofit my brother started.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But there is education on there, yes.
Resource and lots of opportunities for education about regenerative gardening, the diversity of soil.
Where does that name? So in here I say I don't want to dominate, but I'm jumping in. Where does that name "Kiss the Ground" come from? Where was the inspiration for that quote? And I'll share why in a second.
Is it a Rumi quote? My brother's big on Rumi, so I think it might.
Wow. I'm going to find out because we are huge fans of Rumi. But so we were at the Desert Rose Baha'i Institute, and we also stream on the Baha'i Clearwater channel. They're a sponsor of ours. And the founder of the Baha'i faith was imprisoned in Iran. He was exiled from Iran, traveled through Baghdad, Constantinople, and ended up in Akka. And when he arrived on the shores, he kneeled down and kissed the ground and prayed. And I won't share what that prayer was about. It's kind of private. But then he was imprisoned in Akka, which was the prison city in the armpit of the Ottoman Empire. And the nation of Israel literally grew up around him. And there's these prophecies about the desert will blossom like a rose. And when we were in Arizona, we were at the Desert Rose Baha'i Institute, right? The desert will blossom like a rose. And when you said kiss the ground, that all came sort of flooding in. Kissing the ground, and it will, and be kind to the soil. is just one element of that. It's just amazing, the connections here. Sorry, back to you, Angela. I just had to.
Oh, yeah. Well, just tell us a little bit about that, the website Kiss the Ground and the
Kiss
resource.
the Ground is a nonprofit my brother started 10 years ago, and it is to raise awareness around regenerative agriculture. We also have a film called Kiss the Ground that Woody Harrelson is the narrator of, and then we have the second one coming out. And Kiss the Ground was on Netflix for a long time, but I think that they just took it down because I think it's going to be re-released on Amazon Prime, I guess. And they're going to do the trilogy because we're going to have so that it's Kiss the Ground, the movie, and then there's Common Ground, and then they're working on the newest movie, which the name is escaping me right now. So that is Kiss the Ground, and they have all types of online courses. And if you want to do an in-person course, we do a regenerative homesteading course twice a year here on the ranch, and it's like a deep dive into everything that we're doing, from composting to moving animals, electric fencing. But then we also do like preserving food, making kimchi and sourdough bread and stuff like that. So that is all an option as well if you want to do something more of an in-person kind of training. And I'm not sure exactly when, but my online course just got finished. I'm not sure when it will be up and available, but that will also be available. And on the Kiss the Ground website, also there's a film about me and my California farm and how we brought the soil from 0.0% organic matter to 20% or soil organic matter in just a matter of 5 years. It's called Stories of Regeneration, and it's with me. And it shows my farm in California, and it's amazing what we did. And I love that about regenerative agriculture, because we're only here on this planet for however much time we're here. And regeneration and regenerative agriculture happens so quickly. It's almost like you begin to move in the current of God, of the universe, of the earth. And in that current, you're able to create and make so much of a difference. It's like we're being asked to step into that keystone species role and work with nature. And when we're doing that, it just flowers, it just blossoms, like he said. But the soil can create new and healthy soil rapidly. It's not something we're doing for my great grandchildren. It's something we're doing for like next year's Thanksgiving dinner, And so I love that about regenerative agriculture. And the other thing that I love about regenerative agriculture is I believe that there's a connection between God and water. Obviously, it's 700 times in the Bible they talk about water, and I think obviously, but I also think that there's a connection between God and soil. And I think that all of creation is from that microbiology that is in the soil. Like it's in everything, it's in all of us, those species. And when we're connected to the soil and we have that profound relationship with the soil, I think it's because we have that microbiology also in our gut, where we're eating of the soil. And then we are able to trust ourselves and trust God and trust each other more, because we have a little bit of that creation inside of us. And I think that why we all feel so alone and so disconnected is because we don't have that. Our grandmothers all picked peas from a garden and we ate it right out of the soil, took some cabbage, chopped it up and ate it. We don't do that anymore. We're all eating sterile food. And in eating that sterile food, we are not replacing that little bit of creation in our gut that is necessary. We are 50% the skin bag that houses my soul, and we're 50% microbiology that keeps that skin bag healthy. And in order for us to feel healthy and alive and connected, we have to have a healthy microbiology. And I think that is why I do regenerative agriculture. And because I believe that in the end, it has all of us closer to God. And that is a silly thing for some people. They say it's ridiculous, you're talking nonsense. But I think that this is so important. It is not a mistake that 70% of the microbiology in healthy soil is also in a healthy gut. That is not a mistake. That is the way we were designed to be. It is not a mistake that raw milk has 90% microbiology that is compatible with your gut, but hydrogenated, a sterilized milk, however we eat it now, pasteurized milk doesn't have any of that. This is not a mistake. Like, we were meant to live closer to nature than we're living right now. We are not a pestilence or a plague on this planet. We are not the problem. We belong here. We've just stepped out of our role and tried to isolate ourselves from the rest of creation here.
Yeah. So we're gonna go to commercial break. I want to make just a couple of comments. We've talked about this, about how the very purpose, according to the creation story. So for anyone who believes in the Bible at all, it validates everything you just said, and very specifically, because God said he created Adam out of what? Out of the soil, right? The dust of the earth. He took the soil and created man from the soil. Literally man, because before Eve in the story was on the scene, Adam was put in the garden, and his very purpose was to dress and keep the garden. So there is everything you just said is undeniably true, specifically true, and certainly not silly in any way. It is foundational. It is absolutely necessary for any person of faith to understand and accept what you're saying, because it's straight out of the book of Genesis. The whole beginning is all about that. So this is also one reason why we started Hillcrest Orchard Camp here on our property. I remember the first winter we came here. When we bought this property and we came here, it was March, and I looked out and all the trees looked completely dead, right? And I thought, did we just buy a property with just, everything dying here? And then 2 months later, there was just this explosion of life. And having moved out of the city onto a country property, if you will, and just seeing that explosion of life in the spring, it was kind of overwhelming. And I'm no stranger, right? I graduated from high school in Alaska. I literally lived in a tent out on a piece of property that had no water or electricity to get through my senior year in high school. But just that realization of being connected to the divine power of creation and of regeneration was amazing. So we launched something called the Royal Falcon Foundation, and they are also a sponsor of this program. And we're just going to go to a quick commercial break and show some of the activities that we're doing and why we're so excited to be connected to you. And also Sienna May Heath, whom we saw the video of earlier, who's in the audience, who says she wants to get connected to you. We are definitely going to be diving deeper into the soil. And when we come back, we'll interact a little bit with the audience comments. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of Mollie Engelhart.
Welcome to the Royal Falcon Foundation. Our curriculum and activities inspire and train adolescents through hands-on experiences, fostering growth and empowerment. Through immersive and challenging experiences, we shape young minds to think independently and develop their leadership skills. Our programs foster new friendships and unity, shaping young leaders to tackle real-world challenges with confidence. We believe in equipping the next generation with the skills to become leaders of tomorrow. Join us at the Royal Falcon Foundation and be part of a journey that empowers, unites, and inspires. Visit our website and embrace a world of possibilities today. RoyalFalconFoundation.com.
Welcome back. So right before the break, I kind of shifted the focus slightly, but I wanted to offer anything that was left unsaid or that either of you wanted to add before we start looking at some of the audience comments.
No, I'm just honored to be here and thank you. And but no, I'm happy to interact with the audience.
Here's one comment, and this is actually something I was thinking. Try and sell unpasteurized milk, right? That's kind of like a rhetorical question, right? I get mine from Amish communities out here. What is that like? I mean, certainly that would have been kind of problematic in California. Is it problematic in Texas?
Yes, here in the free state of Texas, if you want to sell raw milk, you can sell raw milk only from the farm with a government inspection. We have a herd share right now, so we're working on getting the government inspection, and then we have a herd share, so we do where you're not selling it, but they're reimbursing for the cost of the milk that they own a percentage of. But in Texas, actually, it's worse than California. If you're selling it as pet food, you need to dye it gray, and you can't sell it retail at any stores. Whereas in California, they sell raw milk at the grocery store. So that is one thing that's not. But Amy, I'm actually on I'm on day 9 of a raw milk fast. I've only been doing raw milk. And then I did bone broth the last 2 nights. But I've been doing raw milk for more than a week now, only to reset my gut microbiome. So I do get, and we do kind of sell it. We more reimburse for it, but we will be selling it in the future. We're in the process of building our dairy, but thank you for that suggestion.
So how is that personal transformational journey going? What are you experiencing? I'm sure curious minds want to know about that 9 days.
It's so interesting. It's not been hard at all, because you're getting like 2,000 calories, or I don't know. I'm not drinking that much milk, but my other girlfriend that was doing it with me was drinking like a lot of milk. And I was like, you're getting a lot of calories. So there's not the experience of when I've done the other master cleanse or juice fast where I'm feeling starving. There's none of that. I wake up, I feel fine. I'm totally, it was only that my kids all got sick last week, and then up one night they didn't get sick the same night, right? They all had a vomiting spell each different night. So just on day 8 or 7, I felt a little like, oh my goodness, if I have to stay up another night with a kid with not eating, I was like a little foggy. But I've been just really inspired with how I feel, how my body is, how it is to be 46 and still breastfeeding. I've been pregnant and breastfeeding 10 consecutive years, and so I haven't done any fasting, and it's just nice to give my body a rest, give my digestive system a rest. And I feel great. I don't feel suffering at all. I feel completely satiated. Any suffering is just like, ooh, I want to eat that noodle because it looks delicious, but not any real.
Awesome. So there was a question earlier on about your experience with running a restaurant, given the success that you had out in California.
No, I didn't know how to run a restaurant or a farm or anything that I've ever done, a recording studio. I'm a jump off the cliff and figure out how to fly on the way down. I believe that when God presents you with opportunities, you take the next step. And if it is meant to be, it will be. And if it's not meant to be, it will not be. I don't force things, but I always stay and continue to take the next step. And so I was presented the opportunity of the restaurant, and I figured it out. And I'm eternally grateful for all of the opportunities I've been presented with. But I believe that we get in our own way too much in this world. People spend years trying to figure out and make business plans and try to figure out every detail when they could have already had the business open for years by the time they get to the first step, because they want to make it perfect in their head. However perfect you make it in your head, let me tell you, the world's going to whirl, and it's not going to go that way. So you might as well just take steps in the real world instead of just on your computer or on paper. And so don't be in your own way. I'm never in my own way. That is one of my gifts.
Well, CryptoCat, who asked that question, just affirmed that they are also the same way. I have to share my little humorous anecdote here. One of my favorite little quotes. I have many of them, but how do you know the difference? Between whether this is really an opportunity? Well, it goes like this: opportunity knocks once, temptation leans on the doorbell. That's how you know the difference.
I like that. Someone just asked me, I guess on a podcast like 2 days ago, they said they were interviewing me. Someone who knows me in real life was interviewing me, and she said, as someone who I feel like is led by God more than anybody I've ever met, how do you know the difference between when you're being led and you just want something? And I said, most of the time when I'm being led, there's some surrender or sacrifice involved. It's not what I want necessarily. And I said, I can see the possibility. But I usually have to give up something that's comfortable for me when I'm being led. And she said, oh, that's interesting. And so I like that better than what I said. Actually, I like that opportunity knocks. But I think sometimes we want that to be that we're being led here or there. But usually when feel like I have to follow, there's some, I have to give up my community in California and come here to Texas. And even though there's excitement or whatever, there's some loss, that there's some surrender that's necessary to do the bidding.
Well, here's another little tidbit about discernment, right? From PFFFT. Love that quote of Reagan on the scariest thing to hear is, "Hello, I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Right? We could do a whole show or many shows on how government programs that may actually have had good intent of helping people with a handout end up making people dependent. Or maybe that was the point in the first place of making people dependent, if you want to go to a dark place.
Yeah, either way, we don't know, but what it is that it's like I said, they get to shift this lever, but then they don't necessarily have to be responsible for the impact.
Right. If they get voted out, they just blame the guy that was in there before them, right?
Yes.
And then they make the same kind of dumb mistakes. And I love that, we started with your early experience to show that, where does that willingness and ability to just jump into something? Well, it comes from having a foundation of knowing that you can take care of yourself, knowing that you're not fearful, you're not dependent on somebody else. Push comes to shove, you know how to take care of yourself. And yes, you do that in a community. So you're not like that farmer. When you were telling the story, of how, a community, and it's not just one guy. And if it was one guy with 100 acres and a tractor, I was remembering as a teenager reading Ray Bradbury, The Martian Chronicles. And there was this story, because it was a bunch of short stories. And there was this story about some farmer on Mars. And that's he was like a farmer on Mars, right? And he was just isolated and alone all by himself. And the way that Ray Bradbury evoked that feeling of isolation and loneliness was super powerful. And here you are sharing all this love and all this joy that comes from being in community, and all because you're focused on soil regeneration and being connected to the earth and to creation.
Yes.
I think there's one more question if we have time. If I see it.
Well, we do have time, and I certainly want to share one comment, and then we'll get to the question. Well, Angela, where is that question? I'm not finding it right now.
Sienna.
She just put it. It's new. It's at the top.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, Sienna, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the show. Sienna will be on our show too in the new year, and we'll be continuing to work with her on our programs as we unfold this new brand and this new focus. So what advice would you give a grower in California or another state with firmer restrictions on agriculture? What would you say is the biggest obstacle you face as a farmer in your state?
In my state here or in California?
Yeah, well, I think she's asking about Texas, but also about California.
So California, you have to just jump through the hoops, and you have to just decide how far you want to, but the soil is good, the weather is good, you can grow food most of the year, and low humidity. Even when it's hot in the summertime, it's low humidity, hot. I mean, I could cry thinking about my orchards, avocado orchards and lemon orchards, and that I sold to come here. But so there's lots to be grateful for in California. Just none of it is the government or the bureaucracy. So, and I didn't feel I could stay and fight anymore. I had young children, and I thought that there was a real possibility for some intense indoctrination in California. But as far as farming goes, it's a beautiful place to farm. It's amazing, and I miss it. And the challenges here are totally different than the challenges were there. Here we have radically changing weather. So it'll be 90 degrees and then it could be 40 degrees 2 nights later. And so how to buffer the plants against that is been challenging. And so we have a lot of greenhouses, and we're really just learning what can grow here and what can't, what can take those big swings in in weather. And we've had some expensive and hard lessons learning that, but we're also having really great success with a lot of stuff as well. And we're really excited about, both the vegetables and the perennials that are doing great. And there's stuff I couldn't do well in California that are doing great here. Like, I can just sweet potatoes for days. Like, we just have so much sweet potatoes and barely do any effort. So there's nothing is perfect. We're always going to be, it's always going to be an exchange. Like, you're never going to be like, oh, I went to this other place and it was totally 100% better. Or I divorced this wife and I got another wife and it was 100% better. There's wherever you go, there you are. And wherever you go, there are the challenges of life. And so I've changed the challenges of life in California of bureaucracy and restrictions to the challenges of extreme continental climate, and we just traded those different challenges.
Always being tested, but always learning from those tests, right? I think we're always presented with these tests and how you grow and learn from those opportunities and tests.
Well, here's another little anecdote about tests, right? When God tests us, it's the only test where we get the test first and the lesson later.
Yeah, that's true.
So thank you so much. I just have to share one last comment, unless somebody else in the audience wants to throw a question or whatever out there. And that is just to thank my my companion, my angel, Angela, for joining me. And in case there was any doubt, people are happy that you're here roundabout. Because this is like episode 125 and Angela has never appeared on the show. So the audience doesn't know what's behind, what's behind here and what helps me hold it all together. So Mollie, we want to continue to stay in touch. We would love to have you back on this show to talk about your journey, to facilitate additional discussions. And we're hoping, there was another ad that we didn't have time to share. I don't know, Barbara, if you're out in the audience. Barbara Breon is a pastor out in West Virginia that came with us to Arizona. And she has a book called Blooming for Christ, which compares, the growth of plants. We just had too much great material. I decided not to show that. We'll show it another time. But if you're in the audience, Barbara, out in Virginia, she wanted us to come and help do a program there. She's doing one still in November, if I'm not mistaken, with companion gardening and several pastors out there that are teaching kids, through raised bed gardens, the basic principles of sustainability, self-reliance in just in their circumstances where they don't have a several 100-acre ranch, right? But we want to really mine the value of what you're doing and share it and inspire people, so that we, like leaven, as Jesus talked about, the woman who hid leaven in a measure of meal until the whole bread was leavened. And he said, that is the kingdom of God. This organic soil, getting our roots into the soil, even while our branches reach for the light. All of these analogies are what is needed to help transform this planet, person by person, community by community, neighborhood by neighborhood. Mollie, what do you want to share with the audience as sort of your parting words, based on your experience, and what can these people, these diverse people, take away with them for now until we have you back on the show again?
I just want to say, that you, the consumer, every human being, is the driver of what is happening on the planet. How we spend our money is the driver. And so I'm not saying go to my website and buy my meat or my thing. I'm saying go.
I do want to buy some kimchi from you. Do you send your kimchi through the mail? Is that possible or no?
I think so. I would probably not want to put it in the plastic. We could probably put it, not in a glass. Maybe we could transport it.
Or at least we'll have to come and have some, because I haven't had really good kimchi.
We make really great kimchi. So I'll for sure. But yeah, I want people to support local farmers. I want people to buy meat from somebody they know. I want people to, you are the drivers. We feel insignificant, but we collectively are the drivers of how the change happens. And people talk about this all the time. They come out to the ranch and they say, like, this is so amazing. And I can't believe this is here. And I said, but it's only going to be here as long as people think it's amazing and drive out here to come to it. So my parting words are not a sales pitch for me specifically, but be the change that you want in the world. You are the one that we have been waiting for. And each one of us is that person. And there's no possibility of shifting unless the consumer is wanting that change. So, spend your money the way you think God would want you to. My husband gets super annoyed about this. He's like, can we just do things normal? Like, does it have, everything has to be in alignment with God? But I that would be my request and my ask for all of us farmers and all of us out on the skinny branches doing what we think is right, the harder way. That's what I would ask for is, spend your money and support those people doing the hard work of community and the hard work of regeneration.
Well, yes, and thank you for doing the hard work of inspiring, right? Because in order to know, well, what does that look like? How do I know what God wants me to spend my money on? It takes connecting with somebody like yourself to inspire that thought and that discernment and the willingness, to pay a little extra. We, for example, have chickens here, and we're developing a program now where you can subscribe to get a dozen eggs a month in exchange for a $25 donation to the Royal Falcon Foundation. Now
That's awesome.
That's an expensive dozen eggs, but you're getting so much more than that every month.
Right. And the thing is, it is an expensive dozen eggs, but I'm $8 in organic feed into a dozen of eggs, and we sell it for $10. That means I'm keeping the chickens and doing all that stuff for $2.
Right.
That's almost nothing. It's crazy.
Well, you're not getting anything for your work, right? But
nothing for my work. Right. And so it's crazy how farmers have been pushed to these margins. And so remember that and share abundance in a way that's driving our future forward. Remember, every time we share abundance, you are betting on that future. I'm not saying never go to Amazon. I do it. But that's when I'm betting on that future. That's not really the future I want to bet on. I want to bet on the store in town. I want to drive to town and to go to the store in town because I want to buy the cat food there, even though it's a little bit more expensive, because I want them to exist. I want them to be there.
Yep.
And
Amen.
So that's my advice or my request as a parting words.
Well, thank you, Mollie. We're gonna do one more thing before we sign off tonight, and that's to show the sneak peek from next week's show, episode 126. But Mollie, thank you so much for being here. Namaste, and we can't wait to have you back on again.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it, and I want you guys to come out to the ranch. So
we will be there. We will be there, if only for the kimchi, but so much more.
Okay.
All right. So next week we're gonna do a left turn or a right turn, whatever, into a completely different topic with a very interesting gentleman. Stay tuned for the sneak peek, and then we'll be right back to sign off. Good evening, everyone. This is Wade Franson. I'm here in the studio recording a sneak peek of Created in the Image of God with Timothy Regal, who has written a book, Men of Grit, a 40-day challenge to renew your faith, restore your masculinity, and re-energize your family. Welcome to the studio, Timothy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, we've talked a little bit about this topic, and we're very excited to be able to share this with the audience because we live in a world that needs strong men, but doesn't seem to want them, doesn't seem to like them very much. And this has led to a number of problems. Your book tackles this conundrum head on, in that it shows both the dark side of an upside down society with men who are often trapped in addictions because of their powerlessness. And those addictions sap their masculine energy. And the only validation that would help with this is that which God can give by us fulfilling our God-given role. He created us male and female, and fulfilling that role and the purpose for which God created us is the answer. You dive into this in your book. Can you just unpack that for us here in the sneak peek a little bit?
Sure. Like you say, many men are lost. They're stuck in weakness and complacency. They're looking for a way out. They know that God gave them this inner strength. They just don't know where to find it. Our world, our society, and even our church hasn't given them the tools to live out their God-given masculinity that God created them to be. And so we created this book to challenge men to get up off the couch, to reject that comfort and complacency, to put on the full armor of God and engage in the fight to become the strong men that they need to be, the strong husbands, the strong fathers, and the strong leaders that God called us to be.
Well, and admittedly, we've had a transformation in society where women, perhaps too much in the shadow, needed to be empowered. But everywhere we look, we see the result of multiple generations now of an emphasis on girl power and elevating women and women's total autonomy and freedom of choice over their own body, where, again, the laws of God are not looked at or taken into consideration in this society. And this is why I use that phrase upside down world. So even in our schools, it seems like testosterone isn't even allowed in the school system. The methods of education don't accommodate the differences, it seems, in the masculine and the feminine gender. Do you address any of that in your book? And will we talk about that on the show?
Absolutely, we do. We'll talk about all that and how society and so many areas of life have diminished and put a war on men. And we'll give men the tools to become the godly, strong men of grit that they need to be. And we look at it from men need to be men. It's okay to be men. Like you said, male and female, God created them. God created men to be the head of the household, like Christ is the head of the church, and we want to emulate Christ. Christ wasn't a weak man. Christ was a man's man. He was tough. He was rugged. He was bold. He was confident, and he was courageous. And so in the book,
he was a carpenter by trade, right? Which was not an easy profession back then.
Absolutely. So we teach men how to embrace their God-given biblical masculinity. What the world says masculinity is not what the Bible says masculinity is. So in this book, we deep dive into what those principles are. We call them the principles of a man of grit. And we examined the scriptures and came up with this idea of what a strong man of God is. And so each day of the book espouses one of those principles of man of grit and what the Bible says it means to be a man.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so excited about this. Can't wait until 11/26. It's going to be a wonderful presentation. I can't wait. And everybody listening into this sneak peek, don't miss it. We'll see you there. So thanks everyone for tuning in to Created in the Image of God tonight with Mollie Engelhart, Angela Franson, and myself. We wish you all a wonderful week and see you right back here at 8 p.m. Central next Tuesday. And in the meantime, look up Mollie Engelhart on the internet. Look at some of her videos. Get in touch. Connect with what she's doing. Same with Sienna Mae Heath, Royal Falcon Foundation, and continue to watch, share, and subscribe to this channel where we will continue to bring you the interesting people who are the leaven, the change that we need in this world, and inviting you to participate. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much for having me.